from Pacifica. This is Democracy Now! We're broadcasting from Baltimore, where the Green Party convention is underway.
Our campaign is here to change that breaking point into a tipping point, to begin taking back the promise of our democracy and the peaceful, just, green future that we deserve and that is within our reach.
As Mitt Romney and President Obama dominate the presidential election news, we'll speak with the Green Party presumptive presidential nominee, Dr. Jill Stein, also with her running mate, newly announced Sherry Hunkala.
My name is Sherry Hunkala, and I'm thrilled to be running on the ticket for Vice President of the United States of America with Jill Stein.
We will also look at the Green Party internationally. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Forces loyal to Syrian President Bashar al-Assad are being accused of a new massacre, with more than 150 civilians reportedly slain in the province of Hama. The killings occurred in a village named Tremsa, with some reports saying up to 220 people have died. It would be the worst known attack inside Syria since pro-government forces were accused of killing more than 100 civilians in Hula in May. The alleged new massacre has boosted calls for the United Nations Security Council to pass a binding measure against Syria, threatening sanctions and potential military action under Chapter 7 of the UN Charter. Speaking during a visit to Cambodia, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton called on Russia to join more international pressure on Syria.
The regime is struggling to hold on to large parts of the country. So we do look to the Security Council and all of its members, including Russia, to join us in a serious resolution that gives Special Envoy Kofi Annan what he needs.
More than 100 people were killed on Thursday when a gasoline tanker crashed and exploded in Nigeria's Niger Delta. Many of the victims lost their lives as they tried to scoop up the tanker's oil as it leaked onto the ground. An exhaustive independent probe has concluded top officials at Penn State University, including the legendary football coach Joe Paterno, covered up sexual molestation allegations against an assistant coach 14 years before they finally came to light. The 7-month investigation reveals Paterno, Penn State President Graham Spanier, and other school officials were aware assistant football coach Jerry Sandusky was accused of child molestation as early as 1998, but were only concerned with protecting the school's image. The report concludes that a, quote, culture of reverence for the football program at the school led to a cover-up that, quote, failed to protect against a child sexual predator harming children for over a decade. Sandusky was finally arrested last year and found guilty of sexually abusing 10 young boys last month. Unveiling his findings Thursday, former FBI Director Louis Freeh said Penn State's leadership had allowed Sandusky's abuse to continue.
Our most saddening and sobering finding is the total disregard for the safety and welfare of Sandusky's child victims by the most senior leaders at Penn State. Mr. Spanier, Schultz, Paterno, and Curley also failed to alert the Board of Trustees about the 1998 investigation or take any other action against Mr. Sandusky. None of them ever spoke to Sandusky about his conduct. In short, nothing was done, and Sandusky was allowed to continue with impunity.
The report's findings show Paterno, who died earlier this year, made false statements to a grand jury and to the public about his knowledge of the allegations against Sandusky. An email by Penn State Athletic Director Tim Curley from 1998, 3 years before Paterno said he first heard of the allegations, reads, quote, anything new in this department? Coach is anxious to know where it stands. After Sandusky was again accused of abusing a young boy on campus in 2001, Paterno reportedly convinced his colleagues that it would be most, quote, humane to deal with the matter internally instead of reporting him to police. A janitor at the school reportedly failed to report witnessing Sandusky abuse a young boy in 2000 out of fear he would lose his job. The janitor said, quote, "Paterno has so much power. If he wanted to get rid of someone, I would have been gone." Football runs this university, he said. In response to the report, Penn State is facing pressure to remove a statue of Paterno displayed prominently on campus. The report is also expected to fuel a number of civil lawsuits against the school on behalf of the victims. Curley, the former athletic director, and the school's former vice president, Gary Schultz, still face criminal charges for failing to inform police about Sandusky's abuse and for lying before a grand jury about their knowledge of it. The banking giant Wells Fargo has agreed to pay a settlement of at least $175 million for discriminating against African American and Hispanic borrowers. The Justice Department says Wells Fargo routinely carried out misleading lending practices to minority communities from 2004 through 2009, saddling them with subprime loans and pushing many into foreclosure. All told, Wells Fargo practices are said to have led to higher rates for 34,000 African American and Hispanic borrowers in 36 states and the District of Columbia solely because of their ethnicity. On Thursday, Deputy U.S. Attorney General James Coles said the settlement would bring relief to Wells Fargo's victims.
With today's settlement, the federal government will ensure that African American and Hispanic borrowers who are discriminated against will be entitled to compensation, and borrowers in communities hit hard by this housing crisis will have the opportunity to access home ownership. Under
the settlement terms, Wells Fargo will pay $125 million in compensation to borrowers and another $50 million in direct down payment aid to parts of the country where rampant discrimination was found. In striking the deal, Wells Fargo refused to admit to any wrongdoing but said it wanted to settle the case to avoid a lengthy dispute. Newly disclosed records show Republican presidential candidate Mitt Romney remained at the helm of the private equity firm Bain Capital 3 years longer than he's previously disclosed. Romney has maintained he left Bain in 1999 to run the Winter Olympics in Utah. But the Boston Globe reports Romney retained control of Bain and earned a salary through 2002. President Obama's re-election campaign says the report suggests Romney may have lied to the SEC about his final years at Bain. One day after Romney was booed at the NAACP National Convention in Houston, Vice President Joe Biden received a friendlier reception Thursday when he delivered an address urging support for President Obama's re-election.
He passed the Affordable Care Act, a goal strived for by presidents starting with Teddy Roosevelt. It required him early on to use up almost all of his political capital. He prevailed where no president had done before. He was right. He was right. It cut $100 billion. $100 billion from the federal debt over the next 10 years, providing access to affordable health care to 30 million Americans, 8 million black Americans who would never have had insurance.
In Mexico, the runner-up candidate, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, has filed a legal challenge seeking to void the recent election victory of Enrique Peña Nieto. On Thursday, López Obrador officially accused Peña Nieto of violating campaign finance laws and committing electoral fraud. The complaint says Peña Nieto helped manipulate television coverage of the election and worked with local officials to buy millions of votes. The online whistleblower website Wikileaks says it's won a significant victory in challenging a financial blockade imposed by major financial firms. MasterCard, Visa, PayPal, Bank of America, and others have blocked Wikileaks donations since it began publishing U.S. government cables in 2010. An Icelandic court has now ruled Visa and MasterCard broke laws in stopping WikiLeaks payments and has ordered the company's local partner to resume processing its donations. And the pioneering media activist George Stoney has died at the age of 96. Stoney's career spanned more than half a century, producing film and television that focused on issues of racial justice, social responsibility, community, and freedom of speech. An early advocate of video as a tool for social change, George Stoney founded public access programs throughout the United States and Canada. In a 2005 interview with Democracy Now!, George Stoney discussed his legendary career.
I started in the state of Georgia with a little educational program, and before long I found I was making films for people who should be making them themselves. But at that time, as you know, it was film and it was much more complicated. Now with this user-friendly equipment, there's no reason why people should not make their own programs. And now we have an outlet with public access. We look on cable as a way of encouraging public action, not just access. Social change comes by the combination of use of media and people getting out on the streets or getting involved. And we find that if people make programs together and put them on the local channel, that gets them involved.
The late community media pioneer George Stoney speaking in 2005. He has died at the age of 96. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Good.